It is great that the Chargers have already clinched a playoff spot, but there's still work to be done on offense if they want to avoid an early exit.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 7 seasons, but this is our 5th season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys for making us your first listen today, and to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and also follow the show for free on all platforms, wherever you get your podcast from. And the story today, David, is the Chargers offense underwhelming again in this last week, and I think a concern that if they can't figure things out over these last 2 weeks, they will be a one-and-done playoff team, and obviously we'd like them to do a little bit better than that. And I think the other concerning thing is just a really not as productive stretch for Justin Herbert, which has to be talked about. No touchdowns over the last 2 games and much more. So we'll get into our concern level there before getting into how hard the Chargers should be trying to push for that 5 seed in the AFC playoffs, that they should be trying all in basically to go take that 5 seed from the Ravens and get themselves a matchup with the Jaguars or the Titans. And we'll also get into, if they win out, go 11-6 this season, should Brandon Staley get considered for some coach of the year hype at the end of the year, which is a crazy thing to say at this point. But today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your own football franchise? Then this is the game that's definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. Our listeners can get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDON, all caps, in the game. David, this has been a much maligned offense for sure. I mean, all season long, right? And it's gone through a ton of injuries, right? A lot of guys in and out of the lineup. But it still has just been frustrating because you have Justin Herbert, especially over the last few weeks, that you've had most of your top weapons back. And I think that's probably the most concerning part, right? Is we haven't seen some of the fixes that we've seen from this Chargers offense, getting Keenan Allen back, getting Mike Williams back, getting even Donald Parham back, and whoever. But the buy or sell is this today, David. If the offense can't fix their issues, the Chargers will be a one-and-done team in the playoffs.
Yes, 100% I'm buying it. And the reason why is because in the playoffs, possessions come at a premium and points are incredibly important. And yes, the Chargers defense, the way they're playing right now, they're going to keep them in pretty much any game that they're going to be in. I mean, they're playing lights out. And I think that's what gives you a little bit of pause because, I mean, hey, they're winning football games for the Chargers. I mean, that there's no question about that right now. But you got to score points to win. And in the playoffs, when you're going up against the teams that you could be playing, the Bills, the Bengals, the Chiefs, all of those teams can score at will, really at any given time. So the Chargers need to have that energy on defense sync up with what they're doing on offense. And if they do that, then they can really do whatever they want. But right now, it is kind of concerning. And yes, the Chargers need to do a much better job of scoring points if they want to have some success in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, over their last, 4 games, they've only averaged 20 points per game. Same with over the last 3. And I mean, it would be even less if you took away the pick 6 by Bryce Callahan against the Raiders, right? Yeah. And the Chargers defense has also gotten a ton of turnovers recently that has set the Chargers up in even more favorable positions. 3 points off of 3 interceptions in the last game for the Chargers offense just isn't good enough. And I think there's troubling signs in a few different areas. And I think it starts with the red zone. I mean, the Chargers in the red zone have been really, really struggling over their past 4 games, 6 out of 15 in the red zone. The last 2 games, they've actually been better, right? 4 out of 6 in the red zone, 2 out of 2 weeks ago against the Titans, and 2 out of 4 last week. But that's also just not enough trips to the red zone, right? At that point, because you're just not getting there enough. And I just think that this is also, part of the reason we'll talk about with Justin Herbert, why he's not getting the touchdowns and stuff. But I think the other big problem is you're also not scoring outside of the red zone, right? The last time the Chargers scored from outside of the red zone was way back against the San Francisco 49ers when they had that opening drive touchdown where I think it was a 32-yarder to DeAndre Carter in that game. Or no, it was a Josh Palmer, I believe, in that one. But that was the last time they were scoring from outside of the red zone. Like, it just hasn't been good for them lately. And it is a reason for concern because, I mean, if you have all of those issues going on and you don't score at all in the third quarter, no touchdowns in the third quarter for 10 straight weeks, you're not going to beat these teams.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. I mean, the offensive futility that we've seen in the third quarter has been crippling. I mean, and there's been a number of different things. I mean, their inability to run the football consistently, the penalties that have really, really plagued them and really held them back. But I mean, there's just been way too many empty drives. And when you have the offensive firepower that the Chargers have, you expect them to be able to have more explosive plays. And the play calling has bogged them down, and the offensive line has really, I mean, they've given up a lot of pressure. I mean, it seems like every single
Yeah.
game, the last 4 or 5 games, it's been 20 pressures, 20 pressures, 20 pressures every single time. And so Justin Herbert's having to, work his magic and be able to move around in the pocket and extend plays. And I mean, hey, even the best quarterbacks that can do that on a, somewhat consistent basis, that's going to come back and bite you.
Yeah, of course. And I think the biggest thing is they rely too much on Justin Herbert to make third down conversions, right? And the
Yeah.
Chargers are actually a decent third down team. I mean, they get convert at, I think, 10th in the league as far as their conversion percentage, which is pretty good,
Yeah.
right? But at the same time, I've talked about it so many times on this podcast. They live for third downs. They
Yeah.
just face way too many. You can be a great third down team, but every time those third downs come up, that's just another chance to get your offense off of the field. And it just hasn't been good enough. The Chargers have attempted 230 third downs in 2022, the most in the entire NFL. You can't win like that. The Bucks have the second most at 218. They have 12 more than any other team, right? They're followed by, listen to these offenses: the Cardinals, the Jets, the Browns, the Broncos, Steelers, and Colts, right?
Bad, bad, bad.
And like a lot of that, they're not staying on the field, so they're, facing less than two. But like the Chargers should not be in that conversation. You don't see the Chiefs and the Bengals or the Bills in any of these lists at the top of them, right? And that's one of the things is just asking too much of Justin Herbert. And
Yeah,
Justin
those
Herbert,
teams do a lot better job on first and second down of
right?
moving the chains. I mean,
The Chargers are
the
terrible
Chargers
on
just
first and
don't.
second down.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just don't do enough. And I think that's what's hurting Justin Herbert amongst many things this year. And I think some people have been concerned about Justin Herbert. So the buy or sell here is this: we should be worried about Justin Herbert's recent lack of production.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell this, and the reason why I'm gonna sell it is because the defense is really, really playing extremely well, and the Chargers are 3-1 in their last 4 games. When and I saw a tweet here from from somebody on Twitter. I'm sorry, I'm not getting his name, but the Chargers are 18-4 when the Chargers defense does not give up 27 points in a game. So when the Chargers defense is playing well, then Justin Herbert is winning football games, and so that's the reason why I'm selling it.
Yeah, heads up if you add that tweet and we'll shout you out on the next show. I mean, it is something that he has always had to deal with, a terrible defense. But just because your defense is playing well doesn't mean that you don't have issues on offense and that you shouldn't worry, right? Because that's just basically saying, hey, you don't need to score as much because the defense is playing good. No, Justin Herbert should be having 2 touchdowns a game, right? I mean, he had
Yeah.
31 his rookie season. He's 10 behind that right now, and he'd only played in 15 games that first year. Last year, he had over 40 combined touchdowns. Right now, he's sitting at 21. It's just not
Yeah.
good enough this year. And I think that it's not his fault because, I mean, I'd be concerned, totally concerned. I mean, there's this kind of an open-ended question because I'm concerned because it doesn't seem like Joe Lombardi knows how to fully unlock him. That is what
Yeah, I
concerns
will
me.
definitely agree with that.
But
yes.
at the same time, 0 touchdowns, 3 interceptions his last 2 games, 2 touchdowns in the past 4 games from him. He's been sacked 25 times over the last 6 games.
Yeah.
But if you take out the interceptions and the touchdowns, right, he hasn't played that bad. I mean, over the last 3 games, 915 yards, averaging over 300 yards a game, 7.4 yards per attempt, which is much better than his 6.7 average for the whole season, and he's completing 73.3% of his passes. So, like, he hasn't really played that bad. The Chargers have been running the ball much more in the red zone. That, has helped.
Yeah,
And
5
like, there's
rushing
also,
touchdowns in their last 4 games to show for
sure.
it. Yeah.
And I think the other thing, too, is just that when you thought that guys like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and them were coming back, you figured, okay, we'll start seeing those touchdowns tick up again, right? You'll
Yeah.
start seeing some of those things get fixed. And you just have it. And like when you have the lowest passer rating in QBR of your career, it's going to be a little bit concerning. But to me, I'd be concerned if I saw Justin Herbert missing wide open throws, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that's happening. I mean, yes, he has maybe a couple bad throws a game. Then there's too many other times, though, where he's sitting back there surveying, trying to figure out who's open. And there just doesn't seem to be a ton of separation on a lot of these plays. And it just seems like the offense really isn't helping that. Teams have caught up to what the Chargers like to do on third down. The stick is never working anymore for them, right? And I think those are the bigger things that concern me. other than just Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert is fine and has actually played really well over the last month, even if the box score might not show that. But we do have other things to get into, including if the Chargers can catch up to the Ravens and get the 5 seed in the AFC to try to avoid the Bengals or the Chiefs as we see it right now. And if they don't avoid those teams and they can figure out their offense, big ifs, can they take down one of those AFC juggernauts? We're going to get into that coming up right after this. But first, I'm really geeked to tell you guys about our new partner and sponsor of today's episode, the mobile game Ultimate Football GM. I'm not a big phone game guy. This game has taken up a lot of my time. I mean, I was just recently a little sick and I just spent way too much time playing on this. And what it is basically you become a GM. If you've ever dreamed about becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise, your dream has come true because you can do it with the Ultimate Football GM. And these are the kind of things that you have control over in the Ultimate Football GM app. Hiring the right coaches and coordinators, right? Maybe making up for some mistakes maybe the Chargers made in their coaching hires, trading players, making draft picks, navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft, and all the ups and downs of the season. So Chargers fans definitely have a leg up in that regard. And Locked On Chargers listeners specifically get a 100% free boost to their franchise when they use the promo code Locked On all caps in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. Let's continue this buy or sell here, David, and talk a little bit about more with the Chargers going to the playoffs because the Chargers are a very flawed team. It matters who they get in the first round of the playoffs. So I know there's been a lot of celebrations, and the last 2 games for the Chargers, I want to be clear, are not must-win games, right? I mean, that's not going to – you're going to have to play some good teams anyways, but you still should be really trying to win, and you should be trying to win out and catch the Baltimore Ravens and get the 5 seed in the AFC playoffs because right now, this is the situation. The Ravens have a 1-game lead over the Chargers and if they end up losing one of their last 2 games against the Steelers or the Bengals and the Chargers win out, the Chargers get the 5 seed, which means they're going to get either the Titans or the Jaguars because those 2 teams are going to face off no matter what in week 18 to decide who's going to the playoffs. You absolutely should be trying to do that, Dave. And I think that just means, you can't just rest all your starters. You can't do all the things that maybe some people have suggested out there because it does make a difference. And you should always just be trying to win out the rest of your games if you have something to gain. The Chargers still have something to gain this season.
Yes, definitely. I completely agree. They should be looking to win these last 2 games. They should be looking to get the 5 seed. I understand that you want to get your guys healthy and you want to get them to the playoffs, but you want to be able to do damage in the playoffs. And that is about, hey, if you have the chance to pick your battles and pick your opponents, I mean, you got to beat them. Obviously, you got to beat them all to get to the ultimate goal, which is a Super Bowl. But I mean, hey, if you get the Titans or the Jaguars, I think you feel a lot better about your chances of getting through that first round with a win and then looking at what the other teams do to each other and see who's left after that. So, I mean, you can't exactly pick your opponent, but if you figure out, getting the 5 seed, that path might be a little bit easier to get to that ultimate goal.
Well, yeah, and you give the Bengals a chance to lose a game, right, in the
Yes.
first round. You give the Chiefs, as it stands right now, a chance to lose in the first round. And even though the Jaguars destroyed the Chargers already this season, that's still the easier matchup to me. I mean, that's still the worst of the teams that we're talking about there between the Chiefs and Bengals and Jaguars. I just think that they're the worst. And the other thing is, it's not a foregone conclusion, right? Crazy things can happen. There's a chance the Jaguars lose week 18 against the Titans. And now you get the Titans again with no Ryan Tannehill, right? Coming off a big win. Yeah, but that is a team that you've already beat and a team you should have beat by many more points than
a
you
lot
did.
Better. Yeah.
And that's why I think that no matter what, that matchup is going to be better than getting one of either the Chiefs or the Bengals as we see it right now. But at the same time, you're going to have to go through those teams if you want to make a deep run. But to me, it's like, hey, get that first win first. Give yourself the best opportunity for that first win. You have something to play for. You can realistically overtake that spot. I mean, we don't even know what the case is with Lamar Jackson right now, right? There's a good chance they lose one of those games. And the Chargers have 2 favorable matchups against the Rams and the Broncos, right? The thing is, though, David, you're never going to be able to avoid these teams forever, right?
Right.
And I know as we see it right now, the Chargers are a flawed team, and I wouldn't favor them or pick them to win either against the Bengals or the Chiefs or the Bills because of the current questions that I have about their offense specifically, but just about them as an overall team. And we don't know what kind of their injury status is going to be when they get there, right? Who they could potentially get back with Joey Bosa and Rashawn Slater and guys like that.
Yeah.
But the buy or sell is this. If the Chargers can figure things out on offense, they can beat any of the AFC juggernauts.
Yes, I'm buying that definitely. And yeah, I might sound a little bit of a homer here, but if they put it all together with all of the weapons that the Chargers have, with Austin Eckler playing the way that he's playing, leading the AFC in touchdowns, you get Keenan Allen, who looks like he's really getting back into that rhythm and really just killing guys on third down. He's just unstoppable in that situation. You get Justin Herbert, and you get an offense from from Joe Lombardi that is going to actually stretch the field and really allow Justin Herbert to be who he is, which is
Yeah.
a guy who can throw it down the field, a guy who can throw on the run. Those are things that really need to be incorporated that we haven't really seen. If they put it all together and they have the offensive lines out there with Rashawn Slater and they're blocking the way that they need to give Justin just that extra second to be able to make that play, absolutely. This Chargers offense has nowhere near come close to its full potential. And if it does, I don't think there's a team in the NFL that could stop them.
Yeah, I mean, Jamar Sawyer last week, according to PFF, gave up 5 pressures, right? Like, that does make a difference if you're trading that out with a dude who gives up, like, an average of, like, 1.5 pressures per game in his career
It's
so far,
ridiculous.
right, after his all-pro season last year.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sell it for now. I mean, because the thing is all I said is if the offense figures it out. Because the other big thing that you're kind of, I think, baking into that in your answer is
Yeah.
that the defense keeps up what it's doing, right? And that's an
Yes.
important part of the
For
process as
sure.
well. It can't just be offense. It can't just be defense. You're going up against some well-rounded teams for the most part. The Bengals are a well-rounded team. The Bills
Yeah.
are a well-rounded team. You did smoke the Bengals last year, right? Staley came up with a good game plan. They also had some weird plays, red zone turnover. They had a fumble from Joe Mixon that obviously killed their chances a little bit in that game. But you've seen it, right? And I
Yeah.
think the Chargers could do it again. I mean, we know that the 2 losses to the Chiefs this year were by 3 points in each game. And really, that first game, I think it goes the Chargers' way if Justin Herbert doesn't get hurt, right? Like, I think that's
Yeah.
another thing
Or if
is,
they don't call back 3 interceptions, like my
oh, yeah,
goodness.
I forgot about the callback interceptions. That was
Yeah.
terrible. But, like, I think, you would be hyped about that matchup. You would think the Chargers have a chance in that matchup. I might not pick
Oh
them to
yeah.
win right now, but if they figure things out offensively and their defense can, hold the Chiefs to 20, 24, if it turns into a shootout 27, I mean, I like it. I think the Bills are the toughest matchup. I don't want to see the Bills. Hopefully, one of the other teams knocks the Bills out just because the Bills have only lost 3 games all season, 12-3 on the year. And I think the thing about the Bills is you kind of have to hope they beat themselves a little bit, right? And I
Yeah.
think you have to hope that you catch an off Josh Allen game, which is what makes me not feel great about it because I mean, yeah, he's had less than 200 yards passing in 3 out of his last 6 games, right? You can catch him on a down game, but that is a very, well-balanced team, David, and even if the Chargers give their best, the Bills' best is pretty darn good too.
Yeah, it is. I mean, especially because you have to deal with with Josh Allen, the runner. I mean, he's had his
Exactly. That's
arm
one of the big
issues,
things.
but I mean, he runs like a freight train. I
I did
mean,
not want to see that dude
the
running through
the
the
dude is
Chargers
crazy. I
defense.
mean, he's very talented. Not only, and hey, Justin Herbert has that ability to run, but they don't ever utilize him in that fashion. I mean, Josh
Yeah,
Allen is a true dual threat quarterback. I mean, make no mistake
right.
about it. I mean, he gets significant rushing yards every single time he's out there. That's a very veteran and experienced defense as well. Like they
Yeah.
turn the ball over, they make plays. Their pass rusher has definitely hurt a little bit now that Von Miller is not going to be out there for them. But I mean, yeah, that Bills team is definitely very, very complete. They've had a lot of injuries. They've been able to weather those injuries, and they're still sitting right now currently as the number 1 seed in the AFC. So yeah, that is
Yeah.
going to be a tough matchup no matter what. But yeah, if the Chargers are playing defense the way they're playing right now, and if they can put it together on offense, they can really make that a competitive game for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, there's a chance you get him on a down game. The last time we saw Josh Allen in the playoffs was like where they didn't punt a single time and scored a touchdown like on every drive, and the Chiefs ended up just getting the toss in overtime, right? So like that's the last
Yeah.
time we saw, which is extremely scary. I
Yes.
think in the first game they really didn't like not score a touchdown in that first game of the playoffs last year. So they are a team to be reckoned with for sure. And Josh Allen, I mean, that's the other thing with like kind of the Joe Lombardi, the offense of it all, is it just doesn't seem like Joe Lombardi has consistently enough kind of put Justin Herbert in his strengths and helped out the offensive line and done all those things so we could see something that's kosher to Josh Allen without getting, 5 quarterback draws a game or whatever,
Yeah.
just a bunch of designed runs. There's a ton of read option plays where Justin Herbert's wide open and can probably get 10 yards before anyone even gets close to hitting him. So
Yeah.
that is an underutilized part of the Chargers offense is Justin Herbert's athleticism for sure. But the Chargers, if they get things going on both sides, would have a chance against all of those teams, right? They could beat any of them on any given Sunday. The Bills are just the ones I would want to see the least. I mean, I could see the Chargers taking out the Chiefs and the Bengals, in the right circumstances for sure. But if the Chargers are to win out this season, it'll be something that none of us could have predicted, right? Going in on a 5-game winning streak to get to 11-6 on the season is something none of us had. I mean, I think our total records, we had probably somewhere close to that, maybe like 12-5, something like that. We just didn't think it would happen the way it has because Brandon Staley has navigated a really, really difficult season with the Chargers. And if he does win out, maybe he should get some consideration for Coach of the Year in the NFL. So we're going to talk about that. And also, if Derwin James gets out of the concussion protocol, maybe you sit him just in case. And we're going to get into that coming up right after this. But first, I need to tell you guys that this episode is brought to you by Audible. Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we're sure you're going to love. That's why you'll be able to find an episode from The League available as a bonus episode on Locked On NFL. Narrated by Super Bowl champion and legendary smack talker Richard Sherman and sports broadcaster and rising star Taylor Rooks. I mean, I love hearing Richard Sherman talk for sure. And The League is an 8-part docuseries about the most bizarre, inspirational, and unlikely stories that you're going to find from around the NFL. The bonus episode that's out right now, listen to this. The Way of the Cowboys. It's an incredible story about how the 1977 Dallas Cowboys brought in Bruce Lee's protege to teach their defense martial arts, ushering in a new approach to the way the league trained. I guess you probably don't see Aaron Donald training with knives if that doesn't happen first, right? But make sure to head over to the Locked On NFL for that bonus episode of The League or catch the full series wherever you get your podcasts. Available now. Audible. Get in the game. All right, time to get into a couple more buy or sells here, David. And I think you put a good buy or sell in our chat, right, when we were coming into this. And one I wasn't sure I was necessarily going to agree or disagree with, or buy or sell in this case. And it was about Brandon Staley. And this is the caveat. If they win out, right? 2 more games. The Rams just put up 51. The Broncos, for the most of the season, have had a really good defense, right? They're the team that also gave up the 51 points. So We'll see what happens. But if they go 11-6, right, from where they were, losing 3 out of 4 against the Niners, the Chiefs, and the Raiders, really being on life support as far as the playoffs go, and then ending the season on a 5-game winning streak and looking the way they have, especially defensively, if the Chargers win out, buy or sell this, David, Brandon Staley should be considered for Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I'm going to say if they win out, with all of the things that the Chargers have had to deal with, I mean, losing Rashawn Slater, Joey Bosa, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Johnson. I mean, the list goes on and on, having a hurt quarterback. The list just, it's unbelievable, the amount of injuries that this team has had to deal with this season. Definitely, he should get some consideration because, I mean, you're taking a team that was dead in the water basically week 14, had a 30% chance of making the playoffs, and now we sit 3 weeks later, and they're already in. It's guaranteed. It's 100%. That's 30 to 100% in a few weeks. So. Yeah. Definitely, I think he should deserve. He deserves a little bit of consideration. I'm not saying he deserves to win the award. Let me be clear about that. There are some other guys that I think are probably deserving a little bit more. But to see what this team has done and the roller coaster that it has been on, and for them to find themselves, if they do, with an 11-6 record and a 5-game winning streak, heading into the playoffs, playing your absolute best football, then yeah, I think Brandon Staley deserves some consideration.
Yeah, I think I would buy that. He's done probably a much better job than other people and fans around the league would probably think they have, right? And sitting at 9-6 and kind of being a middle of the pack team for a lot of the season. I mean, their point differential is terrible. That's not one of their strengths this year. When they've lost, they've gotten games where they've gotten blown out. And the last time that we saw them was the first time we saw them beat a team by 3 scores, right? But context matters, right? Significant injuries to Rashawn Slater, Joey Bosa, J.C. Jackson, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams. That's huge. You have Corey Linsley, Derwin James, and Trey Pipkins missing either 3+ games or missing most of 3 games like Derwin has the last couple games right after that ejection last game. Like, the fact that the Chargers are still in it, getting the buy-in from this team, I think is huge. And I do think there's other guys, right? I mean, Nick Sirianni is a really good choice. He's done crazy things with the Eagles, former Chargers wide receiver coach, actually. Doug Peterson, if he's able to turn around that Urban Meyer dumpster fire of a season that we saw last year and take that team to the playoffs, that's a good job. I mean, and then you have Kyle Shanahan, who's on his 3rd string quarterback, Mr. Irrelevant Brock Purdy, and they've won 8 games in a row, right? So it depends kind of how you're judging it. And like other teams, like the Chiefs don't get a lot of credit because they have Patrick Mahomes, right? The
Yeah.
Bills don't get a ton of credit with Sean McDermott because they have Josh Allen. I think the Justin Herbert part of it hurts Brandon Staley's chances a little bit. But I think him keeping this team together, him making that huge decision to go for 2 in that Cardinals game, right? That was a huge turning point in this season.
It
He
was.
did that, and ever since he decided to go for that, the Chargers are 4-1 in their last 5, right? So he
Yeah.
pushed the right buttons. I wish he'd be a little bit more aggressive, but I think he's done a much better job than maybe the general consensus is from around the league. But maybe the most impressive part is that he's had these last 3 defensive performances where the Chargers are allowing only 11 points per game over the last 3, getting the buy-in that he has from young guys and the improvement that we've seen from players like Alohi Gilman, players like Kenneth Murray, which we didn't even know if that was possible, right? Michael
Crazy.
Davis, Asante
Yeah.
Samuel Jr.
Yep.
It's crazy, but to do that without Derwin James was an insane thing to ask of this defense, and they did it anyway. So we know how important he is. The buy yourself for Derwin James this week is Derwin James should sit out this week, even if he clears the concussion protocol because he's in it right now.
Yeah. I'm saying definitely he should be sitting. I just think he's just too valuable of a commodity for the Chargers to kind of put him at risk. If there's any possible way that he could get re-injured, you want your best players to be available and ready to play in the games that matter the most. And obviously, right now for the Chargers, that's the playoffs. I mean, you want everyone available. Derwin James is a force multiplier. He does so many different things for your defense. I mean, he's just one of those just pure rare athletes in today's NFL, and you want that guy at his best when his best is required.
Yeah, I mean, look at Tua, right? Had that
Yeah.
one game where he didn't have to leave the game with concussion. Next week had the game where he had one of the scariest concussions that we've seen on the field, right? Some flashbacks
Yeah.
to Donald Parham.
Yeah.
Like, and you played him back-to-back weeks. He never should have went into that second game, right? I think
At
that's the
all.
same thing with Derwin James is like the scariness of him potentially getting 2 concussions, one in back-to-back weeks. We saw what happened with Asante Samuel Jr. when he had his second concussion last year within a month of his first one, right?
Yeah.
He had to miss multiple games, 3 or 4 games during that
And it
stretch.
affected his play pretty clearly.
Yeah, and he came back and he wasn't the same person down the stretch, and that could be rust or whatever the case is, but you can't take a chance with Derwin James. That's the wobbliest, if that's a word, that I've seen a Chargers player getting up this
It is
season.
now. We just made it up.
He was not right standing up after
No.
that hit, right? He was trying to
Yeah.
celebrate. It seemed like he lost all coordination. Seemed like he could barely stay on his feet. When a dude of that magnitude has something like that happen, a scary head injury like that, you have to treat it with the utmost kind of respect and the utmost concern for his long-term health because of
Yep.
how important of a player he is. But speaking of which, we also saw Donald Parham have that scary injury last year. And it was great to see him come back this year. And of course, he's dealt with more injuries, right? I think he's only been able to play in 5 games so far this year. And I think he's only finished 3 of them, 2 of them. We've talked so much about the Chargers offense and how they improve, right? And how they can get better and things like that. I think one of the big ways they can get better, David, is potentially using more Donald Parham. So the buy or sell today is this. The Chargers must get Donald Parham more involved in this offense.
Yes. And I mean, these last 2 games, you need to get him involved a lot. And I mean, and the Chargers have not done that at all. Versus the Titans, he had 3 targets, 3 catches for 35 yards. Versus the Colts, he had 1 catch on 2 targets. That's not enough.
And had a 30-yard catch called back, obviously, which sucks. But still, either way.
But that's the point, though. You saw what he is capable of doing, the explosive nature of his game, and what he is, how special of an athlete he is.
Yeah.
Like, he can really move. For a guy that size, being 6'8", he can really move. He can really, shake, and like he's got some pretty good strength. He's a good blocker, which I think it has really added to the running game and the success that they've had in the red zone. But speaking of success in the red zone, throw this guy a fade. I mean, give him some opportunities to score these last 2 games. I mean, yeah, you want to get the 5th seed, but you need to see what this guy can really do. And I really feel like he's a guy that can add some explosiveness to this Chargers offense that really, really needs it.
Yeah, and in those last 2 games, he didn't get a single target in the red zone, didn't get a single target in the end zone, right? And that's where you think that, especially considering how much you've, struggled in the red zone, that you'd be trying to use this dude who's 6'8", right?
Yeah.
And that can, catch pretty much anything. And yeah, he was trying to get a little nasty with it after the catch in that last game on that 30-yard gain. It gets called
Yeah.
back, but he was trying to do more than just a little, catch and go down right there. And I think last year I talked about it a couple times. I thought he was their second best yards after catch receiver behind Austin Eckler, right?
Yeah.
And I think Mike Williams too. Not enough catch and run opportunities for that dude. One of the
Yeah,
biggest
I mean, you
plays
saw
of that game, that
that
sidearm
wide
pass
receiver
and
screen? Whoa,
they don't treat him
nasty.
like that, but every time he gets space in the open field, even the other one, right? He gets kind of finds a soft spot in the coverage, probably gains 15 yards after the catch just by running, stiff arming a dude. Like he's pretty nice after the catch.
He
And the
is.
Chargers don't use it that much, right? Too many jump balls and things like that. They need to get him in more of those scenarios. They do it for DeAndre Carter. They do it for Keenan Allen. They do it for Josh Palmer. None of those guys have been as good after the catch as Mike Williams has this year. Let's see more of that instead of just,
Completely agree.
jump ball targets that could potentially get him hurt on the way down,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think there's better ways to use him. And I think the Chargers, as well as getting Donald Parham involved more in the offense, need to get Big Mike Will more involved in this offense, especially around the red zone, because I think he has one red zone target over the last 2 weeks. And what happened? It was a touchdown. So
Yes.
maybe get that dude more involved because the dude catches a ton of touchdowns when he's targeted in that area of the field. But that is going to wrap things up for today's show. Make sure you guys are back tomorrow for the Locked On Chargers, Locked On Rams crossover. The battle for LA is probably sadder than we hoped it would be on Sunday against the Rams, but the Rams put up 51 last week. It could be a good game, and the Chargers, like we've talked about, we want them to win out and do the best that they can in the AFC. And to make sure you guys don't miss it, make sure you're subscribing to the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and also following the show for free on all platforms wherever you get your podcast from. You can also find the show on all of our social media. You can find me on Twitter at DanTalkSports and David Drogemeyer on Twitter at DroTalkSD, and his DMs are always open. You can also find the show's Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. If you guys want to get your voicemails in for the next fan mail show, you can call into 323-524-7924. You can leave a 30-second voicemail or less. You have a good chance of getting on the next mailbag show for sure. But tomorrow, guys, we'll be back here with the Locked On Chargers, Locked On Rams crossover with Travis Rogers. Make sure you're back here for that. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.